We need to carry out a review of all the creatures that we have created, government entities. They become liabilities, soaking up significant amounts of money that ought to be going to aid posts, schools, roads, bridges, etc., etc. And all these organizations which are housed here at Waigani, we're all pointing the finger at each other. None of them had decided to come and sit together to address this massive problem, this cost blowout of between 3 and 500 million kina a year to Papua New Guinea.
I'm concerned to note that we're still having payroll overruns. Now, this is an issue that has been plaguing successive governments, and we have still to grab this animal by its horns and deal with it. Some effort may be placed in terms of budget so that we can get a handle on this payroll issue for public servants that seems to continue to be brought to the floor every year. Someone needs to figure out what the actual cost is for our public servants so that we can budget appropriately and not have cost overruns that we need to deal with in every supplementary.
To the credit of the O'Neill government, they initiated an effort to carry out a review of the payroll. That was in 2014. Unfortunately, an interesting series of events transpired whereby the public service fought back and found many ways not to do or to carry out this review, this very important review. In fact, this is an experience that many of my colleagues here will attest to. The fact that when you want to bring about change, there is resistance. There is resistance from elements of the public sector, especially in the public service, who have become comfortable with the way they often mismanage their responsibilities. Mismanagement of which costs this country significantly, especially the taxpayers. So anyhow, in 2020, after taking office, the Marape government reinstituted the Special Parliamentary Committee on Public Sector Reforms, and I was nominated the chairman. And one of the first efforts we undertook was to carry out this review or continue the work that had been undertaken or initiated by the O'Neill government. And we were able to bring all the parties together: Department of Finance, Department of Personnel Management, Department of Treasury, Department of Attorney General. And all these organizations which are housed here at Waigani, we're all pointing the finger at each other. None of them had decided to come and sit together to address this massive problem of this cost blowout of between 3 and 500 million kina a year to Papua New Guinea. We brought them all to the table. And we said, if you don't resolve these problems, then we continue to escalate. We take it to your ministers. And if your ministers don't deal with this, we take it to the Prime Minister and the NEC. And if finally nothing happens, everyone goes on camera, so that the public can see for themselves and identify the individuals responsible or irresponsible, as is the case often. Anyhow, it progressed, albeit with much dragging of feet, and at times we've had to really seriously bring those responsible to the point where they needed to make an undertaking. And as a result, one of the top accounting firms in the country, Deloitte, was engaged. Contracts were signed, and they commenced their work, and they carried out a professional review of the payroll integrity, outdated IT systems, and the human resources management. And that review has been completed. Phase 2 is now, when the report has been presented, DPM will have to enforce any of the cost-saving measures identified in the report. And I would like the Minister for DPM to take note, Minister Joseph Sungi, Honorable Joseph Sungi, who has done a magnificent job since taking office, that a review committee needs to be established by your department. And at this juncture, I'd like to make a side note that ministers, many of you have departments and department heads who find ways not to do what they're supposed to do. In that instance, you must summon them immediately and ask them why not. And if they continue to turn up with this type of excuses, we cannot do this, we cannot do that, that person is not the right person for that job. And they must be removed immediately. I want to make a point of reference here while I'm talking about the matter of Department of Personnel Management. When I recall, when the Department of Personnel Management was under the ministerial management of the Honorable Elias Kapowore, that ministry started to perform. The minister undertook to review the performance of all heads of departments. And that ministry has the powers to do that. You don't have to wait for the ministers of those relevant departments to come and report to you. Carry out periodic assessments of the heads of various departments. And if they're not performing in the best interest of Papua New Guinea, they should be removed immediately. They are liabilities to this country with their non-performance, with their I cannot do this, I cannot do that attitude. We need people with I can do this attitude managing these organizations. Side note, commentary over. My second point here is that the government needs to carry out a very serious review. And if I am returned as the chairman of this Special Parliamentary Committee, Reform Committee, I will insist that I be given the authority to do this by Parliament. We need to carry out a review of all the creatures that we have created, government entities. Must carry out a review of these 1,419 entities. The Attorney General stated in a 2018 report that there are 1,419 such organizations. Now, many of these organizations are performing in the best interest of Papua New Guinea. They are assets, but there's a great number of them that are liabilities. They have executives, some have boards, they have a budget line. We don't even know what they do. What do? They become liabilities, soaking up significant amounts of money that ought to be going to aid posts, schools, roads, bridges, etc., etc. So I will insist, Treasurer, please take note, and the NEC, that we must carry out a review of these 1,419 entities. And we must decide which are assets and which are liabilities and deal with them accordingly. My third point is that a serious effort must be undertaken to review the activities being carried out in the black economy. That's right. We have a black economy. It's an illegal area, or an area where a lot of illegal activities are undertaken, where taxes are evaded, transfer pricing is taking place, very clever, elaborate tax evasion schemes and scams are established to avoid payment of taxes due to the state, due to the people of Papua New Guinea. These are like people, freeloaders, who live in a house, who occupy rooms, they use our electricity, they use our water, they raid the kitchen, they raid the farms, they watch TV, but they pay absolutely no taxes. They are parasites. And some of them are making significant profits and expanding into all manner of businesses right under our watch. And we call ourselves a free country, but we're too scared to address some of these characters. They've become so big and powerful, so powerful that we don't want to touch them. We ignore that they exist. Well, if we're doing this, then what's the point of waving our flag on the 16th of September every year and claiming that we're an independent country? If they're in here doing business, they must follow the laws. They must pay their taxes. And if they're not doing so, why do we entertain them? Many of us know who they are. We deal with them, become friends with them. We need to take these guys on. If we are really an independent country, then we need to make them pay their taxes. We need to hold them accountable. But we're not doing that. The black economy, I tell you, billions of kina in there that never make it into our coffers. Most of it is being transmitted offshore to build empires in other countries. And I must say that some of our neighbors know this too, but they allow them to invest in their countries. Treasurer, you need to set up a team. You need to set up a team consisting of the relevant government organizations and go after those players in the black economy.